Hello and welcome to another Vegan Interactions Live. In this second edition, I'm excited to introduce to you my sister Allison. And in the next hour or so, we're going to be talking about microsanctuaries, specifically what they are, what it takes to start one, and also maybe the role in the overall animal movement. As well as, excitingly, I think we may have landed a one-on-one or maybe one-on-four interview, or two-on-four, I guess, interview with Allison's feathery friends. So yeah, we'll be meeting her chicken friends, talking about them, talking about their personalities, and hopefully maybe even give you some stories for your own outreach that you can tell to help everyone get more respect for them. So how are you doing today, Allison?
I am great. Thanks for asking. I'm very excited to be here.
Already starting with the puns.
Yeah, already starting.
Oh, well, we're ready for that.
Yeah, good.
So if you are just joining us, if you do please, if you haven't been with us before, the drill is kind of let us know you're here in the comments, because otherwise we don't know who's here. So hello to Amber, Elliott, and it looks like our mom is here too. So we've got the three Hesses all in the same place, virtually at least.
The whole family. Well, a lot of the family. Yeah.
At least the human family.
Yeah.
Soon some feathery family too.
I meant, Jeremy, that your wife's not here, but yes, whatever.
But biological, I guess, yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's the problem with live videos. We can't go back, can we?
No, there's no going back on that one. Whoops.
But yes, so just to start things off, and then we'll dive right in. I think we'll here we go. Elliot, we're gonna have to warm people up to our sense of humor. The scary thing is if we start playing off each other, because we both have a similar sense of humor, don't we?
We do. We'll be gentle.
But I normally, in the vegan and animal circles, oftentimes you hear people ask, tell me about your vegan story. And I was wondering if, to start things off, you could tell us a little bit about your activist story, specifically kind of what inspired you to not just remove yourself from the system, but also to actively help prevent our fellow animals from being bred, used, or killed. So...
Sure. Thanks. I'll keep it, relatively short. I'm old, so this could go on and on and on, but I'll give you the highlights. Animals always have mattered a great deal to me. We spent a lot of time, Jeremy and I both, on our grandparents' farm growing up, which is an interesting way to learn about animals. I really distinctly remember holding an egg in my hand. My grandpa really timed everything, so I would have that experience, and the little chick hatched his way out of the egg. And then, of course, it was a working farm. And so I learned things and internalized things that weren't exactly what my grandpa intended, but I learned them there with him. So on that farm, we learned quite a bit, good and not. But a lot of my experience and love for animals came from that farm in Iowa. And then just growing up in Cincinnati, we did not actually have animals in our home for a while, but I spent a lot of time outside. We had one tree specifically in our front yard, this evergreen tree that I would hang out underneath. And, I could see the whole neighborhood go by, and I could watch the caterpillars, and nobody knew I was there, but it was a really nice way to be in touch with nature. And that really always resonated with me, the being outside and being close to the birds and the other, animals that were outside. And then, reading has always been important to me. So when I was 13, I read, one of the pillar books out there that gets, different sorts of feedback now. But I read one of these books and just started thinking about, our quote unquote food system and what that meant, and really started thinking about who I was eating. And even at 13, it really just struck me as wrong. And so that was when the removing myself part of it came. And so that was in around, when would that have been? Like 1990. So we're in the last century. And, at that time, my grandparents that I mentioned before, who had the farm, they were really legitimately worried about me, not having meat in my diet. Was I going to be, healthy and okay? And so it felt pretty radical at the time. And so my mom, who is on the call, oh, hey, Wendy, hey, Nikki, my mom, who's on the call, did a really wonderful thing, and she was really supportive, and she actually signed us up for a cooking class. And I'm going to use cooking kind of loosely because she made some things that they were, right on this side of edible, but they were, meat free. And I was really grateful for that. And, of course, it became obvious quickly that I was fine health wise, not having meat in my diet. But in 1990, we were still talking about matching up proteins and a whole bunch of stuff that we don't worry about anymore. So, still in these teenage years, I started doing a lot of letter writing. The removing myself from things felt really good at first and is still really important, obviously, but I wanted to do more. So I did a lot of letter writing, and I would get responses back, and that felt really empowering, just using my voice. And then going off to college, I had the opportunity to lead our animal rights group on campus at the University of Michigan. And we did a lot of tabling. We did some different protests at a circus, different places. And then we also brought in some speakers. We brought in Karen Davis, who started United Poultry Concerns, and we brought in Carol Adams. And again, this is still back in the 90s. So these were really, cutting edge leaders in the movement who are still doing great work today. So I was really excited to be a part of that back in the day, and then life happened. I graduated from college, and our dad got sick, and we lost him to cancer pretty quickly after his diagnosis. And so things, veered off track for a little while. But I will say that animals always were at the core of my life and what I was doing. I worked in veterinary medicine for years. And then I was a teacher for a bunch of years. And as a teacher, I piloted an animal care program in our school. And that was really a lot of fun, obviously, but also really important for the kids to learn about what the animals needed and that the animals weren't there for them as entertainment. It was a responsibility. And so the animals were always at the center of what I was doing. And I got started in the nonprofit world a few years ago and was able to take what felt like a really scary leap at the time and leave my kind of stable work and move into really taking this jump to work for animals. I want as many hours of my day and my life to go towards social justice and work for animals. And so I got certified through the Main Street Vegan Academy as a vegan lifestyle coach and educator. That was kind of my next really tangible do something step. And so I work with folks who are transitioning to a vegan way of life, and just some of the nuts and bolts and some of the social stuff that we all know can kind of be challenging. And I did some other activism along the way in recent years as well. I went to one vigil, which outside a slaughterhouse, which I don't necessarily recommend as a repeated form of activism, although it's meaningful for some people. It was important for me to go to one, but it was very difficult, of course. But I went to some animal rights conferences as well and just sort of brushed up on the issues. And now, as of about a year ago, I get to work for animals full-time in my day job. I'm working at a spay-neuter clinic, and it's interesting because we have an incredible staff, but I'm the only vegan on staff. And so I've had a lot of interesting conversations with people. At my desk, I have, pictures of my friends at the farm animal sanctuary that I've been a part of for years. So, people ask me about Benny the goat and Ren the rooster, and we have a lot of interesting conversations. And people have asked me about my girls, so if you don't eat the eggs, what do you do with the eggs? And, people are legitimately, curious and want to know. And it is interesting sort of navigating this world that cares so much about cats and dogs, but doesn't think about the billions and trillions of other individuals that are, being eaten. So it's really, it's great to be doing that full time. And we are an organization that works for cats and dogs. But when we have public events, again, I'm sure we will have public events. The food at those events is always vegan because it doesn't make sense to have it not be that way. And I think more and more groups are getting to that. So that's the short version of my story.
Yeah, I'd say you did pretty good to summarize a few decades in a very short space of time, didn't
Yeah,
you?
I'm 25, so yeah, yeah,
That makes me about 20, doesn't it?
it does. Yeah.
Sometimes I feel that way. But yeah, you mentioned Wendy and Nikki joined us. Also, hello to Nella, Gary. Great to see you here, and Amber. Yeah, and nice to see some familiar faces and names and stuff. So Amber's just saying, and Guylin's joined us here too. But yeah, Amber's just saying really enjoyed your lovely and inspiring story. And I think obviously that's not, I think we could probably do a whole call about the process of waking up to these things slash and becoming aware and then choosing to do something about it and taking action. However, obviously we want to shift on to micro sanctuaries and chickens and everyone. But yeah, I think, and my mom says, hello back to Gary. We're on different platforms, so I'm not sure if everybody can see each other's comments. So just so everyone knows, but yeah, I think just a few things that stood out to me. You mentioned United Poultry Concerns. Just a quick aside for those who are familiar or aren't familiar with that organization. They just published an open letter that you sent me, actually, Allison, about a topic that's close to my heart, which is they were basically calling for the respect of pronouns for our fellow animals. So instead of calling a chicken an it, or basically property object status, referring to them as he, she, they, and so on, which I think is quite groundbreaking. But yeah, I guess going back to your kind of broader story, I think it's cool how we inspired each other because when you were 13, I was 9. So, 9 years old. I mean, I was thinking about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and G.I. Joes.
A lot. He thought about them a lot.
I have a few, there's a few hiding in a storage locker for me somewhere.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think it's cool how we've kind of both kind of pulled each other away from the mainstream socialization process and towards what really resonates with us. I mean, to use a bit of a cliche, like what resonates with our hearts. And I'm just curious, you talked about holding a chick hatching in your hand. And so that's kind of wrestling with like the broader socialization of the marketing and even in our lives, our friends, our family telling us to eat and use fellow animals. How, like, if I appreciate this is a big question, but if you had to summarize, like, what is it that you think separated you at 13? And feel free to be specific about the book and everything because we can unpack that too. But what do you think was it that pulled you away from mainstream culture and pulled you towards respect for all animals?
Yeah, that is a really good question. I probably could I know I could give that a lot of thought. I have given it a lot of thought and I could, say a lot about that. But, I think really, if I'm honest, one of the biggest things that helped me to do that was our family and having mom on one side who really supported me and took me to the cooking class. And she always, taught us a love for animals. And so that was very, just from day one, that was a part of my experience. But then our dad, too, he was really active in politics, local politics, and followed, national politics as well. And so from him, I really learned that we can all do something, we can all make a difference, and being active and standing up for what you believe in matters. And he was doing different things. He was fighting for, sidewalks in our town. But for me, it was just, like Jeremy said, listening to my heart, it was animals. And I saw how often they were, not thought about. But then I would also see people who love their dogs so much. And so it was this disconnect to me that was so fascinating reading Animal Liberation by Peter Singer. I'll say it. Reading that book, I thought, what has happened? How are people so disconnected? Because nobody wants to support these things. Nobody wants to support use or cruelty even, of course. And so how have we gotten to this point? And so I've always been a teacher, even before I got my teaching degree too. And being someone who reads a lot, I know, people want to know and people want to think and make their own decisions and be informed. And I like being a part of helping to make that happen.
And I think that's we will get to the core topic here in a moment, but it's so easy to this is a fascinating topic too, because I think as animal advocates, that's something I know I really grapple with is like when to to, for lack of a better term, let go a bit and literally just give people information, and then it's up to them what to do with it. Whereas I think when we take an animal-centric focus, as animal advocates do, it's very tempting to go further than that, and basically, you know, declare it as, you know, essential, which it is. And I think we can do that in certain ways, but there's a certain point where we just have to step back and, you know, for lack of, you know, as sad as it is, people are going to do what they're going to do. Yeah, well, good.
And that, well, just jumping in really quick, that makes me think, though, too, of the ripple effects, right? And the fact that it is a trickle and it takes so much longer than we all wish it would. Standing outside the slaughterhouse in Chicago that day, I mean, you know, just the glacial pace of real social change can be just devastating. But at the same time, people are constantly hearing things and seeing things. We have a pizza shop here in town that just today has added vegan cheese. So now we have like 6 pizza places in town where you can get vegan cheese in Indiana. And we're a college town, but we're still Indiana. And so things really are shifting. And it's important, I think, to realize that even, you know, if you're not, and I mean, we all know this, but I remind myself of this continually. Even if I never see a change someone makes, I do feel like I'm a part of, you know, just being a positive vegan who's happy and really proud of the choice and really, you know, in line with my values and all that good stuff. And it takes people a while, and it took me a while too, unfortunately. So.
Well, there's a lot that we can learn from that, isn't it? I mean, I think about my inspiration often when I am looking towards others, because I see, I mean, I supported animal use for the first 32 years of my life. I'm always quite quick to share that, you know.
Right.
But I think almost missed one of the most important things to do, which was to wish you a happy Big Anniversary.
Yay!
Today is Allisons Big Anniversary, which for those of you who aren't familiar, she was started to live vegan, was it 4 years ago today? But obviously you talked since 13 and a whole process of...
Yeah. Vegetarian for a long time. Yeah.
Well, and to that point, you know, I was vegetarian then pescatarian for a long time myself. And actually Wendy's just commented a bit ago. I love that picture. Many similarities to my own experiences. And I think it seems like it's a bit of a 50-50 split. Some people, you know, did it overnight, which, you know, is still a bit of a process in my opinion. But then some people, it's years of gradually doing it. So, and my mom just saying, or our mom, 6 vegan pizza places, here I come. Because, bit of news, my mom is moving to Bloomington. And actually myself, we're planning to shift towards the end of the year. So that's been in the works, and we're still working out the details. But we're all going to be in Bloomington together to check out all these places, which obviously, you know, vegan options aren't all that it takes for animal liberation and so on. But I do think convenience is a very helpful thing to make it more socially acceptable. And when people are teetering on the edge, they're vegan curious, they kind of want to do it, but they actually don't want to step out of line too much. That thing makes it, I mean, especially college students, it's like, oh, actually, I'm going to have the vegan option when they're out with their mates. Makes a big difference.
Right. Because there is that time when we know and we want to do better, but it takes time to be really, for most of us, confident enough to live in a way that is just really solid about it. So I agree. All these things help. It's certainly not sufficient, but, you know, it helps.
Well, and I think just a little bit of a running order. We're going to play a quick clip from the video who some of you may have already seen that Al and I did recently, highlighting the rescue story of our feathery friends. And then we'll debrief on that and then talk about microsanctuaries. But the most exciting thing that I'm looking forward to, selfishly, is at the end, we'll do these interviews, which I mentioned at the beginning of the show for those who have joined us since then. So we're going to take your camera outside and introduce us to your chicken friends?
That's right.
One by one? All right.
Yep.
So I think with that, let's go ahead and play. We've got a question from Nell, actually. Before we do that, as a teacher, which do you think is the best way to talk to children about veganism?
That's a great question, Nella. I really like your name. I hope I'm saying it right. So it depends on the age of the kids, obviously. There are a lot of good books out there. Ruby Roth has some really good books. Nerd alert. I always think books are a good way to approach things. For me, just in general, with people, period, the dog cat connection is always really solid. Almost everyone now has a cat or a dog that they love, and making that connection of, oh, well, Beatrice, my hen, also did this the other day. That really helps to get people thinking. So it's, especially if you're in a school, you need to tread sort of lightly and be cognizant of the fact that you're the teacher and the age of the kids. But these conversations come about really naturally. I think when you talk about the personalities and the preferences and the opinions of the animals that we all agree are not food, and then the ones that have been, that we've been taught are, that can get some good convos going.
Yeah, and it looks like Stacy, also known as Trash Carcass on YouTube, is Facebook friends with you as well. So we're
Hey.
bridging. We're going to YouTube, then back to Facebook, and completing the
Nice.
circle, I think.
Nice.
But yeah, welcome everyone. And I think with that, let's go ahead and play this short clip. It's about 2 minutes long. Just a quick heads up, animal use is discussed. There's nothing graphic, but it is mentioned, and there's a few brief pictures of animals' bodies. So, but yeah, just very, very brief. But yeah, probably nothing that people haven't seen, but for those who may be particularly sensitive to that type of thing, because I always try to navigate that. And then, yeah, we'll come back and chat all about it and get to know them.
Even though I had rescued them, they have given me so much more. Don't tell my cats and dogs, but getting to know the girls has been, in many ways, more interesting than getting to know the felines and canines in our family. The girls start each day with so much gusto, bursting out of their coop with abandon. Even though they've been through so much, they don't look back. They are brave and curious. They form deep relationships, spending the entire day in contact with one another, either physically or through their constant chatter. All right, let's watch. Each of the girls has her own personality, her own likes and dislikes. Opal is always the first to say hello. She doesn't miss a trick, ever. Rosie is the most vocal, the most passionate about food. Beatrice is quiet and unassuming. And Hattie greets me with a chirp. She always stays close by my side. And Jane, we lost last month. She was the sweetest, regularly jumping up on my shoulder to get a better view of the world, and I know that she loved the surprised reaction I gave her every single time. Losing her was really, really difficult, no different than losing a cat or a dog. The girls love one another fiercely, and they make their opinions known. They enjoy simple pleasures, a sunbeam, a pumpkin, their warm heater during cold winter nights. Amazingly, the only experience many humans have with these incredible birds is through our so-called food system. Humans meet chickens that are slaughtered at just 42 days of age, still cheeping as babies. When they're entrees, they're already gone, bodies on plates. At least 8 billion of these feeling, curious, funny, and sweet birds are killed each year in the United States alone. If more people could get to know chickens as individuals like I have, I'm confident we wouldn't be eating or using them.
I have to confess, even when I wasn't trying to edit that anymore, I still watched it a few times just because I enjoy watching it. It's just such a cool story. But yeah, that's a 2-minute clip of about 5 minutes in total. But yeah, you're getting lots of condolences about Jane, which I think there's such a huge thing that you gestured at there between the species gap, because culturally, if we were to focus on Western cultures, because that's what we know the best, there is this basic respect for dogs and cats usually, but to extend that to all animals, your cats, your pigs, your chickens, your turkeys, our fellow animals who live in the water, that was a hard one, I know, for me. It takes time, and it takes an open mind and an open heart, doesn't it?
Well, and I'll say too, having lost humans in my life, devastating losses. I almost said it in the video and then I left it out because it can be controversial, but there's, there's a connection too between losing our feathery, our, cats and dogs, whomever we love. When we lose them, it's difficult. And so, yeah.
And hello to Christina who just joined us. We're talking about microsanctuaries and awesome chicken personalities. So yeah, I think what you said is so true because I know I've become more and more confident, as the years of as an animal advocate in general, bridging the gap between humans and our fellow animals. But actually, like when we take away our human superiority, take away the speciesism, and just chuck all that stuff out, like a loss is a loss. Like I've lost animals who aren't human, and it's been way more devastating than humans I've lost in my life. Just to me, it's more about proximity in our lives. That there's someone we spend every day with, like literally they wake up by our side and go to bed with us at night, and then a relative or someone we may not see that much. It's just different. Like all loss is hard, but
Right.
to say we can't compare them, it's like, well, really, can't we?
Yeah. Well, and also, someone who's always so happy to see you when you get home. And you'll see in a little bit when we go outside, the girls, it's like, like Brett Michaels or John Mellencamp or, Dolly Parton walks out in the backyard. I'm like a rock star. So for a lot of people too, especially now with the COVID pandemic going on and on, our animals are more important to us than ever. And for a lot of us, they are our source of comfort and a lot of things. So it's tough. And yeah, it's what you just said here, Wendy, is really interesting. It's like, oh, well, your chicken's gone, your cat's gone. It's like you're getting a new chair. You're going to get another one. And we all know that it's not quite that simple. So.
Yeah, and lots of other people, who were moved by the video, and Amber saying the same, because I think that's the thing, because this kind of flows nicely into our next topic, around just telling their stories. But I think quickly you talked about like the role our fellow animals can have on us. Like you talk about in the video, kind of what they taught you. And I think all the characteristics you're talking about, you're talking about how they just enjoy sitting in the sun and being with each other, and how that's maybe taught you some of that stuff. Is there anything specific that you'd like to highlight that they've really taught you, and maybe how it's kind of helped you being around them?
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk about the girls for days and days. It's so, well, okay, I'll start here. It's so important for all of us who want to help amplify the voices of animals and who want to be advocates to know some of these individuals, whether you care for one or more, or I think microsanctuaries are part of this, large patchwork that also includes larger sanctuaries. So even if you don't care for one of these animals yourself, get involved with a sanctuary near you, because it's so cup filling and battery charging to know these individuals, because it's a lot of these things that we attribute to cats and dogs. And it's true with cats and dogs. Absolutely. I love cats and dogs. I work for dogs and cats, but these chickens, they were brought in the world to just basically be thrown away, and they love their lives. That little clip in the video of them coming out of the coop in the morning, it is balls to the wall. I didn't know a cleaner way to say that. It's full on every morning. They love life. It doesn't matter if it's snowed outside. It doesn't matter if it's hot. They're so happy to be alive. And for someone who, I've dealt with depression in my life, and things are up and down and some days are tough. To see these individuals who are just so happy to wake up in the morning and have another day together, it's just that simple. It's really powerful to see that. And especially considering what they came from, they came from really difficult circumstances, and they haven't given up, and they trusted me, and they gave me a chance, and they didn't know if I was going to do right by them or not. So it just helps to remind me that there's always hope, and being alive is a good thing. And we're all, lucky to be here.
Yeah. Yeah. And just real quickly, I just love how you say, that you work for dogs and cats versus, they're actually working for them versus the other way around. Like,
Yeah.
it's a interesting. Yeah. just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah.
But yeah, actually, Alexander's joined us and has a question about saved for cats, and does that count? And we're going to get into the details of a microsanctuary here soon. And I'm curious, there's 14 of us across the platforms right now. I'm curious if anyone's heard of a microsanctuary before, if it's something that you refer to often, or is it mainly sanctuaries in general you think of? Because excitingly, I mentioned earlier how we're starting to look at shifting back to the US, and we do have a long-term plan to start a microsanctuary. And we've actually been working really hard on some plans, like the placement's essential. Where's the barn going to go? Feeding, where's the water? Making sure that that all the survivors who live with us have enough space, but can still interact and have a natural environment. So this is what we've come up with so far. And I was wondering, Al, if you could maybe give your expert feedback, being a microsanctuary founder yourself.
Sure.
So this is what we've got so far.
Yes. I think the bedroom's a little large. I might cut that in half, but otherwise, spot on. It's perfect. Good.
So
It's really good.
I stole this from social media. You can see the credit in the bottom right corner there. But yeah, some of the comments were hilarious, saying like, yeah, I just get rid of the bedroom and just put my bed in the middle of the room with everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah, on a serious note, I mean, I am keen to do a microsanctuary at some point. And I think a lot of the animal advocates I talk to are keen to do a sanctuary someday. But I think the cool thing about microsanctuaries is it provides a bit of a intermediate area. So I think perhaps the best way to do that is actually if we just talk about what a microsanctuary is. So for those of you who are interested, the Microsanctuary Resource Center has a lot of the basics. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, Alexander, this is it can be as small as one rescued individual. And I think the key with this thing, we're not going to go through this in detail just in the interest of time, but I think they're not very strict on who is or is not a microsanctuary. That's less important than just really supporting the idea of it. Because there's so many different ways to support. I mean, Al, you've got a number of survivors who live with you, and every once in a while you go traveling. So you have a support people that humans that come in and help while you're gone. And that's probably something other people could look to do who maybe they can't start their own microsanctuary, but they can support local ones. Because I know myself, I wasn't very aware of this until fairly recently, like in the last year or two. Because there's like big sanctuaries, it's a huge thing to start and a huge thing to run. Whereas if more people just started to take in a chicken here or there where they could, how many more individuals can be saved, as well as building awareness through telling their stories.
Right. The more safe places and knowledgeable caretakers we have for animals, the better off we're all going to be, for sure. So big sanctuaries and micro sanctuaries, I think both play an important role. And I really, in this overview of what a micro sanctuary is from the Microsanctuary Resource Center, I really like this sentence. Our goal has always been to create community around animal liberation and make it possible to provide the best care for as many individuals as possible. It's that whole starfish story, the little child walking along the beach, and an old dude comes along and says, what are you doing? You're throwing these starfish back into the water, but you can't save them all. And the kid wisely says, well, it matters to this one. And that's always how I've looked at all of this. And the microsanctuary movement, too, is a really tangible and active way to work towards ending all forms of oppression. So it's about humans being safe as well as, all species, which I think is important when some of us are, some of us sometimes get caught up in the misanthropy and some of this other stuff that really doesn't have a place in an effective and really, game-changing movement, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, it's something I think we probably all grapple with. I know I grapple with it myself probably on a daily basis, trying to, kind of the whole hope and humanity kind of thing. But yeah, I think the more time we can spend with animals who aren't human and just get to know them I know it really recharges my soul. Like, I mean, I went to Friend actually earlier this week, and it's just like, I shoveled all day and I got to see the progress of my change, but most of all, I got to see all the individuals out there again, both human and otherwise. And it'll be interesting. The interesting thing to know, though, is if you're on a sanctuary full time, actually needing space away from the sanctuary because people go there to get self care. But I hear a lot of people who run sanctuaries talking about that too. That it's actually just generally as far as sanctuaries go, that they talk about they need breaks too. So that's an interesting one. Yeah, loads of people, I guess, just talking about loss actually, and just about how it is, very, yeah, regardless of the species. It's really something to respect. But yeah, Amber's just saying that microsanctuaries are a new term for her. So that's an interesting one to me, because maybe it's a matter of awareness building beyond starting on microsanctuaries. It's actually just talking about them. Because how would you say? I think one big challenge that big sanctuaries have is actually. I appreciate they get to know the individuals who are there, but it's just if you have hundreds of animals, you can't spend half a day sitting with a pig, for instance, and really getting to know them as the person who they are. So how would you say you've gotten to know the chickens in your care compared to you might if you were running like a large scale sanctuary, for instance?
Sure. And sanctuaries come in all different sizes, and every organization has a capacity, has a limit. And so there are trade offs. If you are a sanctuary that's going to have hundreds of animals, it's likely you're not going to know all of them as well as if you have, I care for 14 animals, or at Uplands Peak, we have 40 some residents. So there are trade offs there. With my girls, it's, yeah, I mean, honestly, there are some days where with 14 animals, I think, oh, if I just, I think back to the days in college where I had my one cat, Annie, and we spent all our time together. And there was something really lovely about that. But you do want to find your carrying capacity and how to do the most good and what feels right to you. So with 4 chickens now, it is nice to go out and sit with them and, and really have a lot of that one-on-one time with them. And I suppose, with larger sanctuaries and having more caregivers, there are enough people to spread out some of that individualized time. But yeah, it's, there are trade-offs to everything.
Yeah, because I know. I mean, I've supported maybe half a dozen sanctuaries in various forms over the years. But I know, speaking at friends specifically, if there are around 150 to 200 survivors who live there. I mean, I've been going there since, off the top of my head, 2018, so 3 years or so. And every time I walk around, even someone who's been there the entire time I've been coming there, I meet someone new, and I'm like, oh, actually, I haven't spent any time with you. And I sit with them for a minute, and they're awesome. So I constantly getting to know new faces and personalities and. Yeah, I guess it's a balance, isn't it? Because I think when you take in as many individuals who you can, you can't do the same things. But I think for me, a big thing that Nish and I are keen to do through our micro sanctuary initiative is really get to know the individuals and really showcase their stories and show that they're just individuals in different bodies. There's no tangible difference. Certainly not to anywhere near any type of justification to breed, use, or kill them, and really just. They are worthy of that basic respect. And I just want to create content that just is so clear that it's, undeniable. But we'll see how I get on with that. I appreciate that's a big undertaking, as I think all animal advocates on this call will appreciate. Do you think what do you think about the relationship between micro sanctuaries and larger sanctuaries? Do you think there's a situation, because I think if a micro sanctuary, for instance, it happens with all sanctuaries having to change over who cares for them, and in the event they do need to change, or maybe even stop running in some senses, I guess larger sanctuaries might help take individuals from micro sanctuaries, but I guess the reverse could be true too.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts around that, like how they can fit into the bigger pie?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're all on the same team, and there are people who do a lot of micro sanctuary work that help to get individuals to bigger sanctuaries as well. For example, in the fall, when the Kaporos ritual happens here in the States, it happens in New York and California, and it's a religious ritual where chickens are killed in public, and so it's awful, of course, but there are activists there on the ground rescuing as many of those birds as they can. And then those birds are taken all over the country. My Jane and my Hattie came from Kaporos. And so they go to microsanctuaries, they go to bigger sanctuaries, and there are people involved with the microsanctuary movement that are a part of that. So really, best case scenario, we're all working together. I think, bigger sanctuaries have oftentimes more of a chance to get people to come and visit. That educational component can be broader. I know here with the girls, a bunch of my neighbors have come over and my friends who have helped care for them when I'm out of town. They've met plenty of people, but, at a larger sanctuary, more people can come for visiting days and that sort of thing. So that's important to remember too. And that was not answering your question, but I just wanted to throw that in.
It's a big thing because I think sanctuaries in general is something I'm very passionate about. I mean, I've done probably 20 different forms of advocacy, and that's the one that really resonates, both being on site to help with the day-to-day stuff, but also the social media presence, because especially in the era of COVID, living through this apocalypse, being able to just put a picture that just really shows someone's personality. I mean, sometimes you just see their eyes. I mean, I did a whole, at the end of the day, Tuesday when I went, I just walked around with my camera. I think I had my camera for like 20 minutes and took about 500 pictures, just, snapping which way or another, because I've got a long zoom lens, so I can kind of take a picture without kind of encroaching on their space too much, and just really, anyway, I'm not sure I answered the question either, so we're messing it up.
And I'm going to do it again because just you talked about being at Friend and meeting someone that you don't remember meeting before. I mean, I think that's kind of cool because really we're talking a lot about what the girls have done for me and our relationships with these survivors at different sanctuaries. But I mean, all of us on this program know that it's not about us. I mean, we gain so much from interacting with them, but sanctuaries aren't petting zoos. They are not there to entertain us. And so there are days I go out to hang out with the girls and they don't care. I mean, they say fluff off. There's a joke. Sorry. They have other things they're doing. And so, I sit for a few minutes and then I let them be. And that is a really important thing about sanctuaries that, individuals go there and they don't have to do anything else. They're not there to do anything other than live their best life. So it's kind of cool when somebody can sort of, almost melt into the background and, getting proper care, of course, but then not have to interact with some, because, some of us don't always want to interact either. And so it's nice that animals have that option too at sanctuaries to not be, the pig getting the belly rub, maybe just the pig who's off doing her own thing and is not interested in belly rubs.
Yeah. And remembering that individual focus, isn't it? Because you put it very well. Well, I think the big thing to me is that animal-centric focus, which I do think is sorely lacking in the movement, which I know I maybe swung so far that for a while I didn't even want to do videos because I just wanted to do videos of fellow animals, which, there's a balance to be struck there. But Alexander has a fantastic point around considering the slaves in the U.S. had to be taken out of slavery and integrated into society, and now we have to take out animals out of slavery and put them into homes. Makes sense. Everyone can join, and this is so key because we're targeting an hour for this, and I appreciate there's loads that we can talk about here. But you look at the Underground Railroad analogies. Even if you can't take in fellow animals, if you have a car, or maybe you can even rent a car, or know someone can borrow a parent's car, whatever the case may be, and drive someone from a situation where they would be murdered and take them to somewhere where they can be safe. That is a huge part of the process, and people who run sanctuaries rarely can take a whole day to drive across the country to get to individuals. I know both of us have taken part in that, in varying degrees. But yeah, I think did you have any thoughts on this one?
It's really interesting. I like the idea too of these, different safe houses all around, just places where these individuals can find some respite and some justice and safety. It's nice to think about it that way.
Well, and Wendy's got a question for you. How easy was it to introduce the chickens to the cat people? We saw that picture.
Yeah.
Well, Simon doesn't like staying inside, does he? So that made it easier for you.
He does happen to be sleeping right next to me right now. He runs outside sometimes. The cats are strictly indoors. We have a screened-in porch, blah blah blah, whatever. But Simon runs outside sometimes and wants to be with the birds. So I didn't really have a hand in that. I didn't have any kind of strategy. It just sort of happened. And it is good to bring up that with the birds, they are so brave and so feisty, but they are, you have to be careful with your cats and dogs and do introductions carefully and, supervise very well. My dog Luna's wonderful with the girls, but I didn't know that at first. So I was very, very, very careful because not every dog is good with the chickens. And I imagine it might be the same for cats. Some cats you wouldn't want to have unattended with your birds, but our introductions just sort of happened naturally and without my endorsement or even consent. So they do what they want.
And probably true. There's probably some humans we wouldn't want to leave alone with chickens and dogs
true.
or whoever else too. So
Yeah.
it really is down to the individual level. Because Nisha and I watched a rooster workshop earlier in the week, which is fantastic. But they, there's all kinds of things, and I think this is where collective knowledge really comes into it. But putting someone in a kennel so they can smell and observe the culture of the group and know that they're not, like, it's a peaceful situation. They don't need to be, fight or flight type mentality. And just get to know them that way. And just, that could be a whole nother topic, couldn't it?
Right.
Because to Wendy's point, because I do think animal advocates, they want to have that connection when they visit survivors at a sanctuary. However, I actually want to do a video around this soon, but I want to get fresh content specifically for it around how to interact with our fellow animals who, reside at sanctuaries. So that I think would be really good. But yeah, Nikki just said, I think dogs in general, actually a relevant point for microsanctuaries is to think about the overall balance. If we already have cats and dogs, being mindful, which I appreciate you were, that it is the overall balance, because I think regardless of how sweet a dog may seem, and I appreciate I'm generalizing about species here, and I'm trying to catch myself from overly doing it, but I do think dogs in general are chase at sanctuaries, so it's kind of hard to contain that. Best not to have dogs at an animal sanctuary, I think, in general, from what I've observed and heard from people. But I appreciate that's a bit of a loaded thing. Because you take Luna to peek and stuff, don't you? And she seems all right.
Yeah, and they're, oh geez, just cat antics. And there
haven't even gotten to introducing the chickens yet.
Yeah, and there are 2 dogs that live out at peak, so it really does depend on the individual. But so it's very good to do your research and be very, careful. And, and depending on the amount of space you have, you can keep dogs separated from chickens. One of our dogs, Roscoe, I wouldn't have out with the girls, so they just aren't out together. So you have to be, always on your toes and thinking, but it's possible to do both carefully, like most things.
Yeah, because, you just and thinking about starting a microsanctuary, because I think that the urge is just to help straight away, especially if you hear about oftentimes emergency situation, you don't have months or years to prepare. You just have to make the decision then and there, which I'm guessing summarizes your situation with your rescues. But really having enough space for everyone. Because I know, especially larger sanctuaries, being able to rest the land and being able to, if individuals don't get along, having enough space so they don't have to be on top of each other, which is difficult. Microsanctuaries generally someone's house or a small property, right?
Right. Yeah. Definitely. I guess if it makes sense, I have a couple just like quick recommendations and tips for anybody who is thinking about doing something like this. It is important, and I'll start with Jeremy was just saying it's important to be able to say no. You need to know what your capacity is. It's not something I'm always very good at, but the most successful sanctuaries know when they've hit their capacity, because it's not fair to the residents you have if you're always saying yes, and you always want to say yes. But that's why it's important that there are more and more and more of us who can help, so it's not all on one individual or one organization. It's really fun to learn how to care for different species that you've not cared for before. It can feel overwhelming, especially if you're a perfectionist or a lawyer's daughter like yours truly, because you want to do it perfectly. You want to do it really well from the get-go, but you won't. You'll figure it out as you go. And so get yourself a support network, just like you hopefully have about being vegan. It's good to have other people who have cared for chickens or goats or cows or pigs or turkeys, whomever you're taking in. You're not going to be able to do research typically like you would. There were a couple times when just Googling, I would Google things about my girls and you see things you don't want to see, and it's not what you were asking about. So have your support network and people that you can ask questions. because obviously your average person, for example, isn't trying to have their chickens not lay eggs. They want the eggs. So you need to have kind of your people. And Vegans with Chickens is a really great group on Facebook where you can ask questions and get perspective on things. There's also the Open Sanctuary Project. They have a lot of fantastic resources about, setup, care, all sorts of things. Farm Sanctuary, the big sanctuary here in the States that's based in New York, and they also have a sanctuary in California. They have a nice, overall care sheet on the Cornish crosses, which are the birds that I care for. So that was really helpful, but you are going to figure it out as you go partially, and you need to be kind to yourself because you're going to make mistakes. There are things that I do differently when I know better, and that's what we all do. So you just have to be kind to yourself. When you have animals living outdoors, there are a whole different set of variables that are present. And so I came home in the afternoon and she'd been attacked and killed, and the girls had been living outside in my fenced in yard in a city for 2 years. And so, of course I felt terrible and I beat myself up, but I also know that I don't want it to sound flippant at all, like, oh, these things happen, because I didn't at all blow it off that way. But you have to allow for the fact that these individuals are outside and you're going to take every precaution you can, but things are going to happen. And so you have to sort of prepare yourself for a little bit of the grief of that, and just knowing you're not going to be perfect. So we did set up some, anti-predator measures after that. So when you know more, you do better. But, yeah, those are my quick tips. Just be nice to yourself. We're all doing the best we can.
Well, yeah, and I know one thing, a little bit of a test I like to do is the flip it to test approach, especially when I'm making myself feel guilty about something, is would I feel the same way if somebody else told me about something? And you should absolutely not feel guilty about that. That's a learning process, and that's something all sanctuaries wrestle with, is that balance between security and risk, and also acknowledging that our fellow animals can take care of themselves, generally speaking. Like that's, on the workshop call I was on earlier this week, talking about, a lot of chickens would be fine just in the woods by themselves. They'd, get on just fine. But yeah, it's that delicate balance, because you could keep them in the coop 24 hours a day too, and they'd be safe, but they wouldn't have any quality of life, arguably speaking. Right. So it's, yeah.
Thanks.
I think that's definitely like, the whole grieving process, I think, is probably the hardest thing, because we're doing this beautiful thing. We're starting a microsanctuary, we're taking in these individuals who will all ultimately leave us, and really grappling with that, but then seeing the overall kind of greater good. Which, speaking of, I think we need to introduce them. I hear we have 4 feathery interviewees backstage. Is that correct?
We do. So I am going to attempt now to switch over here.
And bear with us. This is the magic of live videos, isn't it? So we'll see. This is probably gonna.
Okay, so I'm gonna leave the room so that it doesn't get too loud, and
I'll drop out your other stream, so that'll help.
Cool, thanks.
So yeah, it's a small property, so she'll be back with us in just probably 20-30 seconds. But yeah, I hope everybody's enjoyed this so far. We are gonna introduce the chickens now, which I think it's just clicked up. Might just be taking a minute to get service on her phone. But here we have Bea, Opal, Rosie, and Hattie.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, I want to flip around, though. How do I do that? How do I flip around?
If you just turn your phone, it should.
Oh.
There we are.
Yeah.
Looks like a nice sunny day there in Bloomington, Indiana.
Well, yeah, that's... flip, so, do I have to turn my phone, or can I flip it like I'm on,
There should be a little icon with an arrow around it that you can flip so it points outwards to use the reverse.
I don't see that. Okay, so we're going to try, I'm just going to turn it this way.
Yeah, there we go. There's the coop.
There's Hattie. Oh, there they are.
Here they are.
Hi, girls.
I'm going to make you full screen even.
Hi, girls. And we've got some greens here. Woohoo! Ooh, somebody's getting a big piece there. Yeah, I'm careful about what they eat. Their type of chicken has been really bred to get as big as possible, of course, to then, be eaten. So they can gain weight and do gain weight very quickly. So we have snacks that are green. So today we've got some chard, got some escarole, some spinach. We don't do a lot of fruit because of the sugar, although we do some watermelon in the summer. But yeah, vegetable time is great.
They love racing out to watermelon, don't they?
They do, yeah, they do. Hey, Hattie. So yeah, this is Hattie.
And you can tell them all apart, their little subtleties. This is probably one of those things, getting to know them, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. This is Rosie. Rosie has a very distinctive kind of vocalization.
Yeah. So if I can probe a little bit further, what makes her voice a bit different? Just could you describe it?
Yeah, maybe she'll say something here in a minute, but it's deeper and it's sort of plaintive. It's a that's my impression. But yeah, she's always had kind of a different sound, right, Rose?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see the comments, but everyone's loving this.
Good. Yeah, I can't see anything, so that's good. Hi, say hi to Rose. Yeah, so Rosie came home here 2.5 years ago now. She and Beatrice and Opal were my first rescues. There was her voice a little bit. Hey, Rosie. See, she's brilliant. So they are, here, we'll flip around here now. They are 2.5, which, for individuals that would have lived 42 days, we're feeling pretty good about that. They can
2.5, yeah. So they're full adults then, pretty much.
Yep, they are. And Hattie, the younger, who is the third one in right now, her legs are white as opposed to the other girls whose legs are yellow. That's one way to tell Hattie apart. Hattie is about 1.5 years. So yeah, they do have, some health problems due to their large body size that's been selectively bred for, but keeping the food under control is an important thing. I wish somebody would do that for me.
I hear that with lockdown. I'm the same. But yeah, I guess so the routine is you let them out of the coop in the morning, they race out, you give them a feed, and then how many times do you feed them throughout the day?
Yeah, so they have breakfast in the morning, which is just chicken food that has all the nutrients they need. So they get that in the morning and they get that in the evening. They get a small amount of that's measured out. So twice a day for that. And then they have a vegetable feeding, usually this time in the day in the afternoon to kind of, a little bit of excitement. We all love snack time.
Oh, I could definitely see, like you say, go outside and sit with them all day. Cause are they quite active during the day, or do you oftentimes see them sleeping throughout the day?
Both. They can do both. Yeah, they have their moments, but they definitely nap, and they often nap all together, which is really sweet. So this is Beatrice, and Opal's got the food here. Opal is the sort of leader of the pack. That was Rosie again, that sound.
Yeah, because that's something they talked about on the workshop, is how they're constantly kind of talking to each other, either through, hey, everything's okay type communication, right, or if there's, the fascinating thing I learned is about how they have a different call for if there's an aerial predator or a ground predator.
Oh, no, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, good. We're back.
Yeah.
I can see you.
But yeah, just
there we go.
Just talking about the different types of calls, because I think they've documented several dozen calls that, chickens, because remembering they are like birds, they are birds effectively. That's easy I think sometimes to forget.
Yep.
I love their talking. I loved editing, listening to all their little voices.
Yeah, I mean, it is so interesting. I mean, they are in constant communication with each other, either physically or through what they're saying. It's really, I mean, I've spent a lot of time watching them and I think I have some of it figured out, but they really have an interesting and intricate social structure. And and they have their routine. So yeah, in the morning they come out, they have breakfast, and then they pretty much do whatever they want throughout the day. You'll see our yard doesn't have much grass in it at this point, so we spend time in the front yard if we want some grass, or sometimes we go over to my partner's house. She's got a big yard with lots of grass, so sometimes we have field trips, or all sorts of things. I've done some enrichment for them. We've got some pinwheels. We've got a couple mirrors. We play the radio. Inside the run of their coop, they have a a pool with dirt in it for dust bathing. That's an important thing for them. What else? Oh, they have a xylophone now, and Opal's going to jump up and check out, make sure the bowl is in fact empty, which it's empty, Oak. It's empty. We got it all. Did we get it? I think we got it.
You can tell. Oh well, no, there's a little bit of green there. I see.
Oh no.
Is she gonna find it? I can see that bowl getting knocked off very soon.
Yeah, totally. It's plastic, so it'll be okay. But yeah, they're just brilliant, and they are. You have to make sure you have enough space. I think some people would try to put more birds in this space, but I think 4 or 5 is pretty good here. Because right, Opal.
Well, I've actually got a question for Opal now.
Oh, sure.
The rescue video reached about 40,000 people on Facebook, so I think it's pretty much safe to say they're movie stars now. Yeah. And I was just curious if she started preparing like a powerful speech that she can do at the Oscars, Joaquin Phoenix style.
Beatrice does not want to be left out.
Oh, it is cute how they follow each other around. Oh, not looking up and like, I want to be up there. Because that's a very instinctual behavior, isn't it? Perching?
Yep, totally. It is.
Safer, observe the world. And because you talked about Jane, how she kind of used you as a perch.
Yep.
Jumping up on your shoulders. Well, and to that point, because you had Bia, Opal, and Rosie from bankrupt factory farm, and then Hattie and Jane came to you through the Kaporis rescue.
Right. Yep.
So unfortunately, when Jane was lost, have you seen Hattie kind of be taken in by the other 3? I noticed the 4 of them moving quite closely together there.
Yeah, she really has. It's sweet. She and Beatrice here have actually gotten to be pretty close, and it is nice. She and Jane were together all the time. I mean, they were best friends, and so she was really down for a while. That's okay. That was just the dish falling. She had a hard time. So we spent a lot of time together because I had a hard time too. But the older girls really have taken her in, and they all, sleep at night cuddled together, and they spend the whole day together, as you can see.
Yeah. Oh, it's lovely seeing them just jumping around and exploring their environment. Heather's got a question actually, and I think you may have spoken to their this a bit, but what as far as a life expectancy, given their health issues, you said around 2.5 years is about. I guess you were talking about kind of when they're in the animal use area. Natural lifespans. Is there any guidance that you've read around that?
Yeah, they between 6 and 8 is what I see. 6 and 8 years. And it's always a matter of education. I mean, we go to an exotic animal specialist in Indianapolis who the first time I met with her said, they won't live very long. And I said, at Sanctuaries, they can live to be 6 or 8. And she was very, kind of resistant to that and didn't believe me. But, we'll learn together that they hopefully will. So, 6 to 8 is the sort of gold standard at Sanctuaries. And I think
I love the close-ups of them talking.
I know, yeah. This is Beatrice.
And they have such powerful little eyes, don't they? Because they really are like little dinosaurs, aren't they?
Yep. This is Opal.
That's how I like to think.
Yeah, she's my girl. She's always got to check out what's going on. She doesn't want to miss anything. But they really are constantly saying things to each other. Right now they're probably saying all the greens are gone. Why is this person still out here? What does she want from us? She never stops talking. Shouldn't she be at work right now? But I remember
They are
seeing,
popping their little heads up, and you can see them thinking that.
oh yeah, it's true, totally. But I remember seeing before I came out here, I think a question about their eggs and what we do with the eggs, and that is kind of the quintessential question here with these girls. Their first year they did not lay eggs, and then last year all 4 of these girls did, and it was really kind of awful to watch them go through that. Opal here, who's coming towards me, she knows I'm about to talk about her and to her, and that's Hattie. Opal, it took her, so long to lay that first egg. It was hours, and she just was exhausted. And so what some sanctuaries do is they actually feed the eggs back to the birds, and I did some of that to help them get the nutrients back, the calcium that they lose through that process. It's pretty intense. They, typically as wild jungle fowl would lay, 12 to 15 eggs a year. But they have been, again, selectively bred to lay about an egg a day. And so I actually took them to the vet I was talking about earlier, and they were implanted with a hormone that is used to stop that cycle. So it actually worked really well with these girls, and we'll see what happens this spring. If they start laying again, I'll have them implanted again. But yeah, feeding the eggs back or the implants are what sanctuaries do for the most part.
Yeah, and it seems like that's a key thing is finding vet care, because I appreciate most microsanctuaries don't have the expertise to do a lot of the things, and finding not just any vet, but someone who's also, I guess vegan friendly would be a good way to put it, but doesn't look at them as quote farmed animals, looks at them as individuals who need care, just like dogs or cats who come through their door.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's another thing where your, network of people doing what you do can help. You can share vet ideas, and we drive an hour and a half for this vet, and so you might have to travel a little bit, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and keep the questions coming, and then we'll wrap this up in a little bit here. To don't want to let all this camera time go to their heads, right?
Right. And they have they have other things to do. They're like, if you don't have other food for us, we're gonna get on with our day. This has been great.
Well, Nikki's got another one here. Do they have you noticed them enjoying smelling the flowers, or more kind of looking around for insects?
Both. They are always exploring and pecking and scratching with their feet. They do that a lot too. So they do go after bugs quite a bit. And in the grass, when we're out in the front yard, they're always turning up little things, and I'm guessing often it's bugs that I just can't see, little microorganisms and stuff. A little bit with the flowers, but I'm careful about what flowers they have access to because I don't want them to have anything that wouldn't be good for them. But yeah, bugs all the time. They're always just, going for things that I don't even know are there.
Yeah, and then that's an interesting one for vegans, isn't it? When we start talking about insects and all that, but that's probably a conversation for a different day.
It is. Yeah.
Close-ups are just I know when I'm sitting with the fellow animals at Friend, I could just sit there all day and just look at their little faces and their eyes, and they all have such unique little eyes. Like, have you noticed their eyes different colors, or are they mostly kind of that reddish orange? It looked like in the pictures, I don't know if it was the lighting, but it looked like they were actually subtly different.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to look and pay more attention. They all do have orange colored eyes, but it looks like different shades, actually. Maybe it is kind of the sunlight here, but Hattie's eyes are pretty dark, and right? Yeah, we're talking about you.
You could tell they love the camera.
Yeah, oh, they do.
Very curious.
Yep. Yeah. When's our next video coming out? Yeah.
They've already burned through the feathery funds.
Yeah, yep, it goes quick. But now you can see they're at the back door. They, throughout the day, the girls sit there and, they interact with the cats and Luna, my dog, and it's really quite sweet, all of them together. We're definitely a family. But it is, it's fun to, figure out what you can do with the space you have. I'll just show really quickly. I mean, you can see my yard is not huge at all. I mean, that's the back of it already. And I had this coop built that's pretty big. I mean, it's, it's big for 4 or 5 birds, but they have, the inside part, which is where they spend the evening. But then here they've got an underneath part. So there are all different coop designs, and it doesn't have to be this elaborate or, or it can be more elaborate, but they have this underneath bit that's really nice, especially in the winter when it's raining. But then they also have our deck. I mean, you can see my yard is nothing special, but it's, it's been a great space for them. And the fence has been nice. You can see we've got an extra kind of level of fencing there. That's because Beatrice in her young days would jump over that. I don't know, how tall is that fence? 6 feet, and she'd be out wandering around, and I'd see on the listserv there was a chicken. It's just ridiculous. We had to build a second fence for Beatrice.
Oh, that's being fluid and being willing to adapt, isn't it?
Yeah.
I noticed they definitely follow you around, because I think you spoke to it well, talking about all of you being family.
Yeah, they do. They seem to like me, which is an honor, because I certainly love them, right? That's Rosie.
Oh, that's really sweet.
There's Beatrice. Oh. Yeah, it's been.
I've got to get a soundtrack of them talking. That would be awesome to have as a phone ringtone, or maybe to help me fall asleep at night.
Oh, that would be nice. That would be nice. Yeah, it really, when I first had them and the 3 older girls were in the basement because it was really cold out, hearing them chirp really did lull me to sleep. So it's not your worst idea, Jeremy.
Well, that's saying something.
No, yeah, it is. Yeah. It's been really fun for all of you to get to be here with us and meet them a little bit. They love entertaining visitors, because it usually means they get some greens. So what's not to love?
Yeah, and Wendy's just asking, do they have an obvious hierarchy or so-called pecking order?
Yeah, they do. Opal seems to be at the top of it. And hi, sweetheart. Hattie's at the bottom. She's the youngest, so that sort of makes sense. And I would say Rosie's probably next, and Beatrice is on the bottom. It's interesting. I know cats pretty well. I've always had cats, and I feel like some of my cats just don't really care, and so they're happy to just be in the pecking order. And I would say that's how Beatrice is. She doesn't get into all the politics. Opal and Rosie kind of battle it out, and then Beatrice and Hattie are just happy to be here.
I like that, the chicken politics.
Yeah, it's very dramatic. It is a pecking order. It's called that for a reason. But they're good to each other. I mean, there's some of that scratching behavior Hattie was starting to do on the ground. Always looking for stuff.
Yeah, and I guess it's more an animal welfare point, but that is true that if they had enough space, they don't fight. It's oftentimes when they're confined, and when the so-called cockfighting is when they're tricked into thinking they need to fight. They would much prefer to talk it out. In most situations, they're just not given the opportunity to do so.
Right. And that's an interesting point. I'm glad you brought up roosters again, Jay, because these are girls, these are hens. But I learned from my work at Uplands Peak, our sanctuary here in Indiana, roosters can live just like this. I mean, we have groups of bachelor flocks, they're called, and they, are friends and love each other too. So there's this idea that roosters just, they aren't going to get along and whatever, but that's just simply not true. They, there are different personalities. Some roosters aren't going to get along with other roosters, but there are plenty of roosters who enjoy the company of other roosters, which I didn't know before I spent time out at Peak. It's pretty cool. Yeah,
because we oftentimes try to force our perception of the male-female or human-animal divide, so-called. Yeah. And it doesn't necessarily apply, because that was a big focus of the workshop, is actually how can we make space for these roosters that may have different needs, but they're able to be accommodated for if we're willing to give them a chance.
Right. Roosters. So here where I am in Bloomington, Indiana, in town, we're not zoned to be able to have roosters, and it's because of the crowing in the morning. The sound, I guess, is the reason. And so a lot of places are like that. So, and there are always roosters that need homes. I mean, roosters get dumped, and, roosters don't lay eggs. So as soon as people realize they have a male, what good is that male going to be? So whatever. Anyway, if you decide you can take in a bird and you have the space and it's okay where you are, take in a rooster because they are lovely, and there's so many of them that just have nowhere to go.
Yep. Yeah, that's a really strong
whoever
point. Is to
you
check
get,
the
it's awesome.
yeah checking
Go
the
ahead, Jay,
zoning
sorry.
seems like checking the zoning seems like a really key thing, because I can't imagine a cow friend would well, they wouldn't work in your space for many reasons, but you can't exactly just bring a cow into your garden or backyard.
Right. Yeah,
And pigs, I imagine there's some probably tricky as well. Depends, because we live in a speciesist society, so there's going to be speciesist and human supremacist zoning in place too, I would imagine,
right.
to try and navigate.
It's funny. I mean, we're in a college town, so there are loud parties at all times of the day and night, but a rooster can't be here, but whatever.
Oh, that's like on airplanes. Some of the kids are screaming. Human kids are screaming their heads off. And I remember when I would fly with Stella, I'd be getting off the plane and someone would say, "Oh, there's a dog there." Whereas most flights they force the dogs to be in a different compartment, and it's like actually they're quieter than a lot of humans if we're willing to weigh this thing objectively. But
exactly.
Oh, this has been really lovely. Well, maybe if you could send a big thank you to everyone watching, to Via, Opal, Rosie, and Hattie for to giving us a tour of their home.
Yes. Thank you all, everybody, for being here today. It's been really nice.
Yeah, and there's one more comment from Wendy I'd just like to pull up here. There are a lot of human-constructed social paradigms that intersect with the perception and treatment of other animals, gender and sexuality, for example, which is, that definitely ties into the whole rooster concept.
Yeah.
Well, and also heteronormative values, because why, you gestured at this earlier, it doesn't necessarily need to be romantic, but it could be between two roosters or two hens. Why not?
Right. Yeah.
And if people, if survivors at a micro sanctuary or bigger sanctuary are not getting along, or maybe they're getting along quite well, to actually allow space for that and not try to, as Wendy says, force our constructs on them. Just let them be who they want to be.
Right.
That's kind of the goal with it all, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And interspecies friendships are really neat too. The idea of, like, for example, my dog Luna loves the girls, and it's just fun to see who bonds with whom, or whom bonds with who. I never know when to use whom. It's interesting to watch the friendships form, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and loads of positive. Go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead, Jay.
I was just going to say loads of positive praise. As far as I'm concerned, it's the chicken show. But yeah, the loads of people just saying thank you. Just Nikki saying thank you. Amber saying, "This has been lovely today, Allison. Thank you. I've loved meeting you and the girls. You're such a kind, warm person." And Mom says, "Thank you for this wonderful time together with my grandhens."
Oh, yeah. I'm pretty sure my mom is moving to Bloomington to be closer to the girls, and I can't blame her.
And she's just going to put up with you, right?
Yeah.
You win some, you lose some, right?
Yeah, I'm part of the package. But yeah, anytime if any of you have questions about anything, or if you start thinking about taking in birds or anybody else, reach out. If I don't know answers, I can help you get in touch with somebody who will. I'm on Facebook. You can find me through Jeremy's stuff, or I have a website, vegcoachal.com. So,
which I believed I'd linked on the YouTube description, but yeah, I think if they can't find you, they can reach out to me and I can kind of complete the connection. Elliot says thank you too, as does Wendy. So good to meet the family. Nella, thank you. This is great.
Yeah,
and Elliot's got one. Yeah, who bonds with whom?
Good, thank you. I never know. It's something about the object and I don't know.
And Nikki's liking the grand hens reference.
It's good. Our mom's pretty cool. But yeah, thanks for all you do, everybody. I mean, living vegan is awesome, but of course there are also times when it's a challenge and it can be difficult. So it's really nice to have this community of people who are, we just want to lift each other up and live in a way that, is right. So thanks for all you do.
Well said. Yeah, I've seen the term called family, like a vegan family.
I like that.
That's one of my favorite parts of these live streams too. So obviously, you're always welcome back, because I think lots we could talk about here.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody. I'm gonna sign off and get them some fresh water, and I don't know, see what other bidding I don't know. I haven't been paying them enough attention. They probably want me to do other things for them, but Happy Friday.
Sounds good, Al. Thank you for negotiating this interview on behalf of your chicken stars.
You are welcome. You are welcome. Yeah, we'll talk about the contract for the next video.
All right, love you, Al. Talk to you soon.
Love you too, Jay. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Oh, well, I don't know about everybody else, but we've got top of the chicken coop. I don't know about everybody else, but I really enjoyed that. I think a lot of us, especially through the apocalypse, haven't been able to go to sanctuaries like we normally would. So these virtual catch-ups, I think, are a really nice way to do that. So if you are at a sanctuary, maybe there's ways that you could kind of connect people who aren't there with the survivors there and do some outreach and maybe some self-care for our fellow vegans and animal advocates too, because as Allison said, that's a big part of just reminding everyone that we're not alone. And just a real quick thing, I'm excited to announce that I have arranged for my first live stream in quite some time, since the beginning of the apocalypse. For next Sunday at 6 p.m., I'm going to be discussing animal rights with someone who I met actually through the thread for Allison and the Chickens video. So we're going to be having a live outreach conversation in this format right here. So, and everyone's obviously welcome to tune in and comment along as well. And yeah, if you want to join the show, you're more than welcome to do so. As you can tell, this is kind of a new project of mine, but so there's not any necessarily regular frequency, although I do have a few weeks of stuff coming down the pipeline now. But because I think we're all passionate about different things, and even if you just want to explore a topic together, I think that's where we can kind of create that community as well as, empower each other to explore ideas and evolve our advocacy. Which I think the more of us who can do that, the better. So, as Al said, thank you everyone for everything that you do, and we'll see you next time. To be a guest on my next live stream, email me at veganinteractions@gmail.com or message me on Facebook. We can explore animal advocacy strategies, or I'm happy to respond to questions about veganism too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.